What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods back with another Week 13 college football preview, and it's rivalry week. And we've been covering the biggest and best rivalries of the weekend, man. And we have another one. We have the Battle of Paul Bunyan's Axe going down in Minneapolis this weekend, and it has a bunch of New Year's Six bowl implications, and it also is ultimately going to have large ramifications on who wins the competitive and crazy chaos filled Big Ten West this year as number 14 Wisconsin travels up to Minnesota to take on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And the Badgers are a 7-point favorite currently in a game that kicks off at 3 p.m. Central Time live on Fox this weekend. Now, you know, this is one of the oldest rivalries in college football, and it's been played more times than any other rivalry in FBS. And man, the stage couldn't be any bigger. Like I said, the New Year's Six bowl appearances, determining who wins the division and ultimately gets to go to Indianapolis to play for the championship. This one's big, along with bragging rights, like most of the games this week for 364 days of this next year. And so let's set the stage before we get to cover, breaking down the keys to the game. You got the Badgers entering this matchup 8-3, 6-2 in the Big Ten. They can clinch the West with a win this weekend over the Golden Gophers. And this team has been one of the hottest teams in the country over the past few weeks, as they're in the midst of a 7-game win streak since their October 2nd loss to Michigan. They've turned that 1-3 start into an 8-3 record, and a 10-win season is still in reach for them. That is a giant improvement from where they were leaving that Notre Dame Michigan back-to-back, losses early in the season. Now, on the other side, PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers enter 7-4, 5-3 in the Big Ten, are coming off a giant win over Indiana on the road last weekend, and it halted their 2-game losing skid. Now, PJ Fleck has this team aiming to end their season with their first ranked win of the season and a ton of momentum going into the postseason. Now, the Battle of Paul Bunyan's Axe, man, it stretches back to 1890. This game, that was a 63 to nothing win for the Golden Gophers, and this series has been so competitive over the years with highs and lows for each team. But the Badgers ultimately lead the overall series over the Gophers 62 to 60 with 8 ties, and they currently hold a 2-game win streak over the Gophers, with the Gophers' last one coming in 2018. But Minnesota has only won 3 games since 1995 in this series. So I wasn't even born in 1995, just to kind of put that in perspective for you guys. So that is the stage. Everything's on the line this weekend. One of the best rivalries in college football. So let's break down some keys to the game, and we'll start with Wisconsin. For the Badgers, if you know this team's identity, if you watched them at all this season, you know it starts and ends with the rushing attack that has been the face of the program year in and year out, and it's going to be the key for just about every game Wisconsin plays. They're going to have a tough test against this Minnesota rushing defense, only allowing about 103 yards per game on the ground and less than 3.5 yards per carry. So it's going to be an interesting matchup to see how this plays out. Now, you look at this Badgers rushing attack, it leads the Big Ten in rushing offense. They rank top 10 in the country with almost 230 rushing yards per game, over 2 touchdowns per game. And, there were a lot of questions about this rushing attack. I want to kind of take a little detour here. There were a lot of questions when Ches Malusi went down with the season-ending injury. Then Isaac Garindo also went down with the season-ending injury, and it really opened up a spot for Braylon Allen to be the face of this running back room. And as a freshman, he has become one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. Over 1,000 rushing yards. He's averaging over 7.5 yards per carry and 12 rushing touchdowns. When you look at where he ranks in the Big Ten, this guy wasn't even like really going to be a big contributor, for Wisconsin coming into the season. Now he's second in yards per game in the Big Ten. He's first in yards per carry. and he's still top five in rushing touchdowns. And this guy was probably third, fourth string coming into the season. So Braylon Allen has done an excellent job this season in really picking up the slack for the Badgers due to injury. And Braylon Allen is going to be a key this weekend. And when you look at this rushing attack, they do so much damage outside and off tackle, and it's been a problem for defenses against Allen. He's been so explosive. He's been able to consistently make linebackers and defensive ends miss tackles on the edge, and he's able to bounce things outside and really create some explosive plays. When you look at the off tackle slash off the edge running, over 700 yards, almost 10 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns, 30 first downs, 20 explosive runs, and almost 500 yards after contact. That is elite production off tackle and off edge for the Badgers and Allen. And so that's going to be a key for Minnesota is can you set the edge and can your linebackers play sideline to slow down this rushing attack that loves to bounce things wide and get around the end and really make some explosive plays happen. Now, as much as the rushing attack is key, the other key is going to be Graham Mertz at quarterback because the number one thing for Mertz is he has to avoid turnovers. The turnover bug cost the Badgers so many games earlier this year. They were in position to win that Notre Dame game and in multiple, a kick return and a pick six, and it just really got out of hand late in that game due to turnovers. When you look at their 1-3 start, Mertz only had 2 touchdowns to 6 interceptions and only one game over 185 passing yards. But since then, he's only thrown 3 picks, 7 touchdowns, and he's been much more consistent through the air for the Badgers. And that's really helped this team turn things around down the stretch. Now, for the season, still has 1,600 yards passing, 9 touchdowns, 9 picks, and 4 rushing touchdowns. But I really want to see the Badgers rely a little bit more on the play action, man. Mertz and these young wide receivers for Wisconsin really seem to benefit from it. They only run play action on about 21% of Mertz's dropbacks, but that's where he's most efficient and most productive. Off the play action, his completion percentage jumps up to 64%, almost 600 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, no turnovers, 6 big time throws, and almost 30 first downs generated. That is where it seems like Mertz is most comfortable. I would like to see this offense, get a little bit of rhythm going on the ground and let Mertz work off the play action and give him some high percentage throws to build his confidence. I think that is going to be key down the stretch for the Badgers. Now, the wide receiver core, man, not the strength of this team coming into the season by any stretch, but a solid unit of 3 guys has really emerged, and they're going to have big games this weekend. The tight end Jake Ferguson, of course, almost 400 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, and Danny Davis and Kendrick Pryor at the wide receiver spot for both of these guys, a combined over 700 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. These 3 guys have to be key for Mertz and create some separation and really help him out establishing his rhythm. When Mertz can get his rhythm going, that's when he's at his best. So that's going to be the key for Wisconsin this weekend. Now, for the Golden Gophers, it's not really going to be that much different. These teams are built very similar this season because both of these teams are going to try to establish the rushing attack due to their passing attacks not being very efficient throughout the season and really struggling at times, I would say. Now, this Wisconsin defense ranks first in the Big Ten and the entire country, only allowing 64 rushing yards per game, less than 2.5 yards per carry. So the fact that Minnesota's key here is to run the football, they have a much tougher test. They're going to have to try to find a way to create some separation against a very talented front seven of Wisconsin. Now, you look at the Golden Gophers, they still have a top 3 rushing attack in the Big Ten. It's top 25 in the entire country, over 200 yards per game on the ground, over 2 touchdowns per game for the season. And similar to Wisconsin, they've had to overcome injuries. I mean, they had to overcome losing their leader on that offensive side in Mo Ibrahim for the season, and then they lost Trayson Potts later in the season against Indiana. So the rushing attacks for both of these teams have had a lot of turnover and things like that. Now, Kai Thomas and Marquise Irving have been the guys to kind of take over. Thomas over 600 yards rushing, four rushing touchdowns, while Irving has over 500 yards rushing and four rushing touchdowns as well. Both of these guys have to have big games this weekend. Wisconsin is not going to miss many tackles. The offensive line is going to have to establish their dominance. And these running backs, when they find a hole or a crease, are going to have to hit it full speed and make some guys miss in the open field. You're going to have to try to create a bit of some explosive plays, similar to how they played, in Ohio State, where they were able to bust a few explosive plays to open up that offense. That's what they're going to need this weekend, and it's going to be one of their toughest tests of the season. But Thomas and Irving have been playing very well down the stretch. Now, the Golden Gophers, similar to Wisconsin, also make a living off the edge. The linebackers and DNs for Wisconsin are going to have to step up. Almost 1,000 yards rushing off the edge for Minnesota, over 5 yards per carry, 14 touchdowns. They've had 60 first downs off the edge running outside, 35 explosive runs, and over almost 600 yards of yards after contact. That is just, I mean, that is impressive in terms of all the different types of running backs that they've had to put on the field. All of them have done an excellent job getting outside and making something happen when they get in space. That's going to be another key this weekend, because the interior of that Wisconsin defense is really a strong suit. Now, their linebackers do play sideline to sideline really well, so it's going to be interesting to see if the Golden Gophers can get something working outside. Now, similar to Wisconsin, Tanner Morgan has had some struggles this year, but if he can replicate his success from even back in 2019, this team's going to have a shot. But throughout this season, he's struggled at times. But last week, completed 80% of his passes, two passing touchdowns, no turnovers, and really was the catalyst for this team pulling off a giant win. But for the season, 9 passing touchdowns to 7 picks, only a 58% completion percentage, and only 1,700 yards. That's way lower than what we're used to seeing from Morgan. For me, the number one thing for Morgan is you can't turn the ball over. This Wisconsin defense is too good, and you can't be completely ineffective, because if you become one dimensional, Wisconsin is going to eat you alive, and that cannot happen if you're the Golden Gophers. So that's the key for them. Now, the matchup to watch for me, for me, it was easy because of the strength of that front seven for Wisconsin. It's the Minnesota O line against this Wisconsin front seven. Because if Minnesota cannot win the line of scrimmage and establish the run while protecting Morgan, then Minnesota could be in major trouble, and that could really determine the winner of this game. Now, the O lines performed extremely well, only 17 sacks allowed this season, and they also only allowed 51 total pressures over the first 11 games of the season. Now, Connor Olson and John Michael Smits have been the two highest graded players on this offensive line. Neither have allowed a sack, only one combined QB hit, and only 8 total pressures, as they've been the highest graded O lineman by far for the Golden Gophers. So for me, this offensive line is big, it's physical. They've shown in certain games that they can win the line of scrimmage. They pushed around Ohio State. They've pushed around some other teams this season. And if they can establish their will on Wisconsin, Minnesota at home is going to have a great shot to pull off this big upset to end the season. Now, on the other side, the Badgers rank first in pass defense and rushing defense, and they rank top 3 in sacks this season in the Big Ten with over 30 in just 11 games. If they can get after Morgan, force them into mistakes while slowing down this rushing attack just enough, Wisconsin could possibly run away with this one. Now, it all starts with Nick Herbig at defensive end, 7 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, over 46 total tackles. You also, at the linebacking spot, Leo Chenal and Jack Sanborn, the experienced linebackers with immense talent. Both of them have over 3 sacks. Chenal has over 6.5. They've combined for almost 30 tackles for loss. And you look at the total tackles, man. Chenal with 92 and Sanborn with over 80. These guys are all over the field, and they've had so much experience that they play off each other so well, and they might be one of the best duos at the linebacking spot in the country. Now, Chenal ranks second in the Big Ten in tackles for loss, fifth in the Big Ten in sacks, And Sanborn, on the other hand, ranks fourth in the Big Ten in tackles for loss. So both of these linebackers can play in the backfield, and they're going to be the X factors in this matchup because if Chenal and Sanborn can get into the backfield and wreak havoc, it's going to be a long day. And then also Matt Henniskin at defensive tackle, 3 sacks, 28 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss. He's their interior guy. He's going to have to play a big role in getting some push up into the pocket and not allowing Tanner Morgan to escape the pocket and make some plays downfield. So this is the matchup to watch. Wisconsin has to get to the quarterback and slow down the run game. Their linebackers have to play sideline to sideline and play in the backfield and wreak some havoc. While if Minnesota can establish that offensive line, they're really going to have a great chance to win this game. Now, this game's always competitive, man. I don't see this being a blowout. I see this being a fairly low scoring game. I just trust right now this Wisconsin defense to make enough plays to win this game. And I also trust the run game for Wisconsin right now to get to just wear down this Minnesota front seven, control the clock, control the pace of the game, and just make a play to win the game late. I have Wisconsin winning the battle for Paul Bunyan's axe 20-14 over the Golden Gophers. So a 6-point win. They don't cover. It's a close game, but 20-14 win for Wisconsin over Minnesota for me this weekend, guys. Listen, comment your score predictions below. Go ahead and give me your takeaways of the game as well. Like the video, subscribe if you're new, and make sure to tune back in later this week for more previews right here on the Blue Bloods, man. But listen, I hope all of y'all have a great Thanksgiving. I hope y'all have a great weekend with y'all's family. But listen, come back to the Blue Bloods, get your college football content, and I definitely appreciate y'all tuning in. But for right now, guys, the Blue Bloods are out.